Hi, everyone. If you watch the show, you probably know what a huge Rocky fan I am. I even talked about it in my TED Talk a couple of years ago. On today's show, I have Mike Kunda. He is a Rocky interpreter / impersonator, and he gives an outstanding tour in Philadelphia of all the favorite sites of the Rocky films. He is also the star of the film The Pretender, and he's written a book called Cue the Rocky Music. Super excited to have him here today. I'm so glad to finally sort of meet you, right? I was supposed to meet you during the tour that got canceled again, but we'll meet someday in person. But thanks for being here.
I'm so glad you reached out. This is awesome. I'm excited. I think one of my favorite things is talking about Rocky, but with a feminine point of view, because so much of Rocky was built around the Adrian factor, and that, my friend, you got going on. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a huge compliment.
Sure.
I appreciate it. Let's get to how and when you saw Rocky for the first time and its impact on you from that day to this day.
When I was a kid, probably 72, 73, 3 years old, 4 years old, my mother would read a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull to me every night before bed. It was about the seagull who wanted to fly higher and farther than any other seagull, but there were rules in the seagull community he couldn't do. Anyways, he found a way to train and be his own bird. And so it had these undertones of achieving and rising up. Years later, when I was 11 years old in 1979, I've been picked on by schoolyard bullies. I was always dressing in costumes, Zorro, Superman, whatever. And I would wear these to school, and that didn't fit well in the social acceptance ladder. So I suppose my father fell for me and he said, Mikey, there's this movie on Sunday night. It's called Rocky. It's about a guy who's a fighter. He's not too good, but that's not the point. The point is he keeps trying. Well, when your parents tell you something like that, you listen. And the night I sat there and watched it, those big white letters scrolled across the screen, and you hear Bill Conti's, fanfare for Rocky. Da, 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 da. I mean, it literally changed my core, my DNA core. And I went to bed that night and I said, man, this is something really abnormal. I never felt anything like this. It was the first time I was being inspired. And so much so that the next day, in the morning, I got a magic marker and I wrote on the back of my sweatshirt, Italian Stallion, because I must always become the hero in some manner. I must dress the part. And I wore it to school the following day, but it didn't go very well.
That wouldn't go very well either, right?
No, the kids didn't notice. But in the 70s, we're roughly the same age group. And I grew up in a little town called Scranton, Pennsylvania, and the teachers there could slap you. They could humiliate you or drag you around the class. And the only thing I had to fight back with was my big mouth. And so it bled into class sometimes. So the teacher dragged me in front of the class, turning me around like a ballerina, and asked the class, what's wrong with Kunda's sweatshirt? Well, no one knew, no one cared. And he said, this is the incorrect spelling of Italian Stallion on the back of the, and that was it. I was the original social distancer. So that was the initial concept. So I always tell parents, don't stop reading to your children, because if it wasn't for my mother reading Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I might not have had that connection to Rocky and the themes that were incorporated.
So I saw it for the first time in the theater when I was 5. And I remember it. I remember it being the first movie that you don't want to get out of your seat. Right. I didn't feel that way about a film again until Good Will Hunting. And that's a long time. That was a long time in between.
Yeah.
And so when I watched it for the first time, what I think, and I have you on here, maybe people watching might not be Rocky fans.
Yeah.
But this isn't as much about that as the impact of a story and how it can transform our lives and impact us in ways we would never anticipate. When I saw the film, I was only 5 years old. When I started seeing the promotion for the second film, I started to understand the magnitude of the success of the first one, because then you start to hear more of the stories, or I was a little bit older to understand them, how he wrote it on a notepad in the apartment in Hollywood, and how he had little money to his name, and how he turned down all the money Hollywood was offering him to not star in the film.
Right.
these things intrigued me because it's that whole, would be, you know, this idea that you could give up and then what? I mean, I can't imagine had he given into that. I'm sure he can't imagine it either, what life would be like. So when you were 11 and you saw it for the first time, and there were some things that led up to your needing to see it, your dad wanting you to see it.
Yeah.
How did it change you in terms of your everyday life? Because now you have something else that you're focused on besides these other characters that you tried to emulate or pay attention to as a kid.
So initially, I'm one of those people who put off doing. I wait. But it was like
that.
Yeah, no, I did. As a kid, I waited 35 or 40 years before I started my career as a Rocky interpreter / impersonator. It was like a slow boil. It really was. I knew in that moment, I knew I was going to be affected differently than anything I had affected me before. But because I have a social tick of fear, I work out of a fear zone no matter what. I'm 53 years old. Everything I do is based out of fear. I'm not one of those people who say, come on, let's go and do it. I think it, and I think the worst scenario, the other shoe's going to drop. So that plagued me my whole life. It has nothing to do with my parents. My parents were wonderful parents. The love and attention they gave me and my brother, not being really well off. We were like lower middle class at best. They did their best, but it was this insecure tick I had that I couldn't shake. So for me, I saw the same thing in Rocky. I saw the insecurities. First half of Rocky, everyone's yelling at him. Everyone. And when he has that jacket, and when he cinches it up and pops that collar and he's hidden underneath the hat and his gloves, his hands are covered in the cutoff gloves. He's in a suit of armor. So everything that would come in bounced off of him. It didn't hurt him as much until he got to Lou Marie, who really hurt his feelings, creepo. But for me, I thought if I could find a suit of armor, maybe this would help me. When I was 13 years old, my grandfather, who was an old Scranton coal miner, called me up to his house one time after a beating on the schoolyard. I was 13 years old. And he says, Mikey, I got something for you that may help you. And he gave me his old black fedora and his black leather jacket, which was remarkably like Rocky's. So I put it on, and instantly I had audio recorded Rocky on a tape recorder because we didn't have a VHS machine. And I would walk the neighborhoods of my town in West Scranton. I'd have the hat on, the leather coat, and I would angle the headset so I could hear Rocky. And I would say the verbiage over and over and over and over from the movies. And this started to build some type of security system around me. And whenever someone would challenge me, whenever I would fail in a class setting, even my parents, when they would parent me, I would go right to Rocky mode. Mike would go away and Rocky would be this default that came up, and I would start to curl my lower lip. I would start to say, well, I don't know what do you mean? I don't know. I mean, me, what? I would go into this Rocky mode, and that was my defense. And for maybe 10 years, nobody really knew where Rocky ended and Mike began. And I always knew, but it was just working out of fear. And Rocky would gradually build me into this, I don't know. I would segue from the persona. I think by the time I met my wife, I had segued from the persona into someone who kind of understood me. And I think that was the other part I needed.
Well, I watched your film again last night, The Pretender, and it's really the whole story of how you came to where you are now. And yeah. I'm going to show a clip as we go to break, and we come back, we'll talk about the film.
I don't always stay in character. Sometimes, voice gets a little, the vocal cords from, yeah, how you doing, adds up at the end of the day. Butterfly stitches don't really hold that well. At least the type I get by, I don't know, maybe by a cheap can or something, but they don't really hold up that well. So of course, you gotta have a little wound. You gotta be a moron to want to be a fighter, you know what I mean? So rap, you almost guaranteed to end up a bum. Sometimes I got pain all over. Shooting on like a large wound, you know? And here comes a large wound.
My mother, she would say to me, you know, what are you gonna do with yourself, Michael? What are you gonna do? There's nothing that just hit me that I wanted to do. I wanted to be Rocky. That's what I wanted to be. We'd have our conversations at night, and she'd just go, Mike, how are we gonna get this kid to realize he's gotta get his education? We kept saying, oh, well, he's gonna put money together, he's gonna go to college, and he's gonna do all this stuff. I did try. I had like 25 or 30 jobs.
Sometimes we don't know where Rocky ends and Mike begins.
Nothing ever held my focus. I was afraid that he was taking so many shots from everybody. He was becoming better at his fantasy.
When you go home at the end of the day, can you live with yourself? Did you do the best that you could? And that's the message I got when I was a kid. And most days I didn't. Most days I was so aggravated and frustrated with myself. But when it comes to this, I feel like I could do anything.
You've just seen a clip from the film The Pretender. I'm here talking with Mike Kunda. You're the star of that film and of the story, and you're here we're sharing our common respect for the character of Rocky and its impact on our lives. And we've talked about this off of the air. I had given a TED Talk, and part of my TED Talk covers my admiration of Rocky, the story, and Sylvester Stallone, who made the film. And what he went through to get it made. And so having you here is a delight. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And seeing your film, and thank you for letting us show the audience and share it with them. Seeing the film again last night, there were parts and I was in tears, and I was feeling just really grateful that there are people who understand and have that feeling. Obviously, thousands, millions of people feel the way they do about the Rocky film. That's why it's still successful today. When people, how do you feel when people make fun of him, Rocky? The voice and the this, because I can tell you my family's not allowed to do it anymore. Because I don't like it. I don't like when the yo.
I'm with you.
All of that. Yeah, I don't like it.
I'm with you. I really am. For decades, I got into fights. I alienated so-called friends, girls who I was dating. They were all third-degree bag ladies, anyways. But they would drop me very quickly. My own prom date left me at my senior prom because they used to tease on Rocky and I didn't, not allowed. It's very frustrating because for me, Rocky is a philosophy. It really is. You know, in Rocky Balboa, he talks about it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take. That's how winning is done. And that is the philosophy I've lived my life by. Lisa, I may never be the best in the world, but I can certainly try to be the best in my world. And that is the absolute philosophy I absolutely live my life by. I swear to you, it is. And when now I'm a little more mature. I can't change people's minds. They're either going to buy into the philosophy of Rocky. They're either going to get me or they're not. And I stopped getting upset about it about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, I have the admiration, and I think that anyone who makes fun of it really doesn't know the magnitude of the entire story. I know you get probably asked this all the time, but which is is Rocky the first one your favorite?
Yeah, Rocky by far is the one that took me headfirst skidding down the Rocky road. Favorite? That's a tough one, but it depends on my emotional state. I go either Rocky 2 or Rocky Balboa.
I love Rocky Balboa.
Me too.
As much as Rocky.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's a very close second.
Let me ask you something. Do you change your mind? Like if you need a Rocky movie, but depending on what's happening to you in a given moment, will you hit up Rocky 4, No Easy Way Out, just to get into a moment? Will you go to Rocky 2? How does it work?
Well, I will take whatever's on. So if it's a Saturday and
Right,
they're having
right.
a marathon and it's on, then I will
Yeah.
watch what comes, and I love whatever I see.
I got you.
And
I got you.
but I would say that Rocky Balboa is the one that that I really thought was brilliant. I feel like it was redemption. I feel like it made up for some things that weren't as good.
Right,
And
right.
for sure that story was part of our time. So that made
Yeah.
sense, the way that they
Yeah.
did it, and the digital, anticipation of who would have. I just thought all of it was brilliant. Hopefully people who are watching this have seen Rocky Balboa to know what we're talking about. But yeah, I mean, I never turn the channel when a Rocky film comes on. Even if I'm busy, it's still on in the background, and I'm not someone who has
Right.
television on in the background. So
Exactly.
but I think that those two hold for me. I love two
Good.
also. I love when
Yeah.
he tells him to win and he figures it out. I mean, I love all of that stuff. When you think about the Pretender film and choosing to have the cameras follow you, and there's some, you show your own baggage, your own
Yeah.
stuff, and how you
Yeah.
work through it. What is your favorite part of your film?
At the end, I'll even you have to excuse me. I'll get a little emotional talking about it. So there's two parts. When my father says, "Get up and go back to the," I remember that moment quite vividly. And for the longest time, I was such. I don't want to use this word like a negative, but I really failed quite often at everything I attempted to do. Dozens and dozens of failures. And my parents had a ringside seat to that. And at the end of The Pretender, when my mother says, "What else can I say? He's my son." It punches me in the heart. Even right now, thinking about it, it really means the most to me. So
Yeah, and she was pretty quiet.
that's her.
During the volley of the conversation when your dad and your mom were on camera together. So when she said that at the end of the film, and we're not giving anything away by talking about the end, it's a docu-style film. I thought, oh, well, that's all she needed to say.
Yeah. And that is my mother. We have these big rousing dinners at my mom and dad's house back in Scranton, and we'll quite often they go to all hours, and mom always sits back. We're all yapping away and going, and mom will just have a little sip from a white wine or whatever. And whenever she makes a statement, it almost borders on profound, and it's like, well, that's why you're mom.
I'm talking with Mike Kunda. Mike, we were talking about your film, The Pretender, and yours and my mutual love and respect for the film and the character Rocky. And you and I had plans for me to do your tour, your Yo Philly tour, while I was in Philadelphia. And I'll tell you how I found you, because I have, when the tour resumes, which I'm hoping will be next spring, we'll get to meet. Of course, I'm going to visit the Rocky Steps. People visit from all over the world for their own reasons. Of course, I want to do that. And I was thinking, well, I'd love to go and see Mickey's Gym, and I'd like to go see the pet shop where Adrian worked. There's things I'd like to do, but they're pretty sketchy areas of town. And I'm not so sure I'd want to go driving around myself and filming and such. So I started looking for tours. And I found yours, and I reached out to you and I said, "Hey, we're coming. Would it be okay if we filmed over there?" And you're like, "Come, it's on me. Let's do this." I'm so excited to do it. Tell people how you thought of that idea and what it's like for your everyday life in your work to get to take people from all over the world, like myself, on these tours to all the favorite places from the Rocky films. It must be, I mean, talk about find a way to do what you love and get paid for it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
In 1990, my wife and I, Sue, were watching Rocky on a VHS, and I paused and I was like, "We got to go to Philly and find these locations." So we did. We tracked them all down over, a period of 10 hours. And on the way home, she goes, "You got to do this, like do a Rocky tour." And there were no tours.
Well, here we are. 1818 Tusculum Street. How's the Rocky built? This place was a very secret location for years. Fans tried to find it, but they couldn't. It tucked away. And there's some great stories that
over the years, I've gotten a chance to talk to a lot of the neighbors that live here, and they really had some great stories. People coming at all different hours, want to see where Rocky lived and the filming locations. People come from Japan, they come from Sweden, Germany, you name it. They just want to find this location, and they just want to get their picture taken with 1818, like near their shoulder where Rocky was. And actually on the street, this first manhole, I'm pretty sure it's this first one here where Adrian gives Rocky a butt kiss. And they start jumping around. It was right about here. It was like, oh, butt kiss, how you doing, kid? And there's hugging him right about here. And the dog's running around in circles, you know. And he brings them up inside, and then they go for a run.
A bunch of time goes by. Rocky Balboa comes out, and I go, wow, Rocky and Paulie go on a tour. So I came up with the idea, maybe I should go back and why don't I do a tour? I mean, I know all these facts about Rocky, so we did that. And I began to spend some time with Sylvester Stallone. I was on the set of Balboa and the Creed movies. And I had spent some time with him, a great deal of time on his 60th birthday at the Victor Cafe. And so I would ask him these questions, and he would give me these beautiful long answers about why certain things were done. And my own Rocky knowledge, I put it together in a big funnel, mental funnel, and I would tell people this. And I started doing it on a big yellow school bus, and then I said that got to be, it didn't work out as well as I had hoped. So I started doing it in a two-door Honda. So it started going well. And I said, well, I better get a minivan.
Need a bigger car.
Yeah, I need a bigger car. And so we do it in a Honda Odyssey. We take 7 people, private tours, whether it's one person or 7, and we get people from all over the world. And before COVID hit, most 80% of my tours come from around the planet, which is amazing. Every continent, it's truly a universal language. Rocky is. And they tell me, like, people in Russia learned how to speak English because they had sneak VHS tapes into the USSR, and they would have the words over I mean, it was crazy. And that's how they learned some English. So we started doing them. And like I said, before COVID, we were doing about 45 or 50 tours a month for about the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. And then COVID hit. But right before COVID, Sly endorsed me on his Instagram. There's a great picture of him punching me in the face as I'm dressed as Rocky in front of the Rocky statue. A more poetic picture you will not find. And so
I have to ask too, you talked about, I started spending time with Rocky or Sylvester Stallone, and he was there to film Rocky Balboa. I didn't even ask you your first time meeting him. How did that happen? I've met him at a Planet Hollywood opening.
Me too.
Yeah. Is that when you first met him?
When he was filming Copland in Edgewater, right across from Manhattan. It was my birthday, August 18th, and it was 96, I believe. And we were in a Planet Hollywood. We were waiting there. And all of a sudden, he comes walking towards us. He was having dinner, and he comes walking towards us, and I was frozen. I document this very well in my book, Cue the Rocky Music, but in the moment I couldn't say anything. And he takes his glasses off, and my father's like, tell him it's your birthday. And I simply say the dumbest thing any fan could say. Yo, Sly, you're the best. And he just goes, hey, thanks. I appreciate that. And he keeps right on walking. It was horrible. It was embarrassing. And from that, a friendship began that I just cannot believe to this day that the guy is, he's my friend.
How many of us can say we get up every day loving what we do? We just don't. He's just lucky.
He never gave up his dream. He never stopped fighting. He never stopped believing. So what more can you say?
He's my son.